If you came across this video, it's likely you either did track in high school or some other sport such as maybe football, soccer, or maybe basketball or some other field sport where speed was involved, and maybe because of the change of direction movements and the contact and all that, you are interested in doing sprint training, but it's just been a long time since you've done it, and so that's how you came here. Now my caution is that you're really going to need a solid foundation before you jump into sprint training, because you don't want you to get injured, your first couple weeks. So some possible starting points would be if you've already been doing CrossFit or high rocks, or you're doing a combination of resistance training as well as running. Those would be a good starting point for beginning a sprint training program. Alternatively, if you've been doing resistance training in the gym as well as some other movement activity, basketball, tennis, maybe playing soccer and so forth, where you're moving your body and doing some running outside of your resistance training in the gym, those would be good foundations. But if you're starting from just office work, sitting at a desk all day long, and it's been 10 years plus since you last sprinted, we've got a little more a longer time frame before you're going to be able to begin a sprint training program, because otherwise you're asking for a very serious injury in the first few weeks of your program. So the key concept we want to kind of apply here or keep in mind is one called a gradual progression of intensity. So just like you wouldn't go from benching or squatting 135 in the gym to doing twice that amount in a short time frame, with sprint training, again, you don't want to go from just walking to doing max velocity sprint intervals in a period of just a few weeks. It needs to be over an extended period. We're talking months here, where you're going from a very light jog to a more moderate jog to kind of a brisk jog to kind of a more intense run to maybe an intense run but still not a max intensity type run, and so forth. And again, this is over a period of months, not just a few weeks, because your body, not just your muscles, but also all the tendons, ligaments, and so forth that are involved in all your tissues, whether it's Achilles, hamstrings, quads, adductors, and so forth, they're not used to that sort of activity. They need to gradually adapt over a period of time so that you don't incur an injury. And the reason why I kind of emphasize this, gradual progression of intensity concept is because the forces involved in sprinting are implied in very short time frames. So basically, kind of between 80 to 120 milliseconds is a time frame. So when you're at max velocity, you're doing a full stride. You're touching down. You've got your knee extension, your knee flexion, you're pulling your trail leg under your hips, then reapplying force, and all this is happening very quickly, and you've got so many muscles and tendons involved that again, you need to adjust over a period of time, and so that your body's able to sustain that effort without incurring injury. And so that's why, again, this gradual progression of intensity, because forces are much higher than what you're maybe used to in some other types of activities, like pickleball or yoga and so forth. Now I have a concept I refer to as speed in reserve, which is kind of analogous to gears of an automobile. So in an automobile you may have third gear where it's kind of like a moderate intensity, fourth gear it's kind of a more intense effort, and fifth gear is kind of a max effort. So I'm saying, like, assuming you already have a foundation in place of resistance training plus some sort of activity outside the gym, your first month you're operating in third gear, you've got plenty of speed in reserve. Then your second month, fourth gear, more intense effort, still not a max velocity effort, still have speed in reserve. Your third month, maybe like a fourth and a half gear, maybe kind of like a 90% effort, but still not 100% effort. And we're kind of, like I said, that gradual progression of intensity. And then in the fourth month, after already having your foundation in place, you can consider some max velocity intervals. But you just have to make this a gradual process. We don't want you getting injured in the first couple of weeks. Now, just like you do in a gym workout, you want to make sure you do a warm-up prior to your sprint sessions. So you can look up the term, dynamic warm-up, and look for, typical warm-ups that would be done, whether it's, your quadriceps, your hips, your hamstrings, and so forth. You want to move those limbs through a range of motion to kind of prepare them for movement. And then you want to do kind of what's referred to as strideouts, which are kind of like a fast jog. Just preparing your body for that kind of more intense movements, or even, we talk about kind of gradual progression of intensity. That also applies to a warm-up where you start from, you arrive to the track or to a field or whatever, and then you're kind of going from arriving to preparing yourself for doing a more intense workout. So that's the concept there. Another concept I want to emphasize is that of full recovery between intervals. Now this is maybe more in, say, kind of your second month and beyond, but if you're training for speed and not just conditioning, then you need to allow your energy systems as well as your CNS, or central nervous system, to recover from the stress of that sprint interval, because again, sprinting is very intense. So the general rule of thumb is 1 minute of rest per 10 meters of sprint distance. Say if you're doing a 50-meter interval, allow yourself 5 minutes of rest between intervals. This does mean you're going to limit the number of intervals that you're doing, but just that general concept of being fully recovered between sprint intervals. Same thing in the gym. You can't go from doing a heavy squat to 30 seconds later doing another heavy squat. So same concept there of full recovery. Now in your first few months, you're probably going to just be focusing on like 40 to 60 meter intervals. But there is a concept or distinction between speed training, which is distances up to 60 meters, and then speed endurance training, which is generally considered kind of, at least for sprint athletes, kind of 80 to 150 meters or maybe 200 meters. Now I do one speed session during the week where most of my intervals are going to be kind of at 60 meters or less, and then another session where I'm focused on speed endurance. A lot of times I'll do 120 meter intervals. But maybe some 80s as well. So again, just that distinction between speed training up to 60 meters, speed endurance kind of 80 and beyond. And in the first few months, you really want to focus on the shorter distances. But after kind of maybe like 6 months down the road, you can kind of consider a speed endurance session as well. So just as an additional note, if you're coming from zero, and it's been 10, 15 years or more since you last did sprinting, and you've been kind of sedentary over that time, like I said, you do need a foundation in place. But there was a period a few years ago where I went from learning how to walk again to 2 years later actually competing in masters track and field events. So it is possible to do that transition over a period of time, but again, it wasn't something that happened over a period of weeks. It was over many months where like I said, I was learning how to walk again, and then gradually just getting more intense in both the weight room and also in the activities I was doing outside the gym. So it is possible, but just be aware it is a long time frame if you've been out of action for a long time, a long period of time, like many years. So again, just to summarize, you want to have a solid foundation in place prior to starting a sprint training program. A combination of resistance training and some sort of movement outside the gym. CrossFit, High Rocks would be good examples, but again, you can do something on your own. The gradual progression of intensity over a period of months, going from either third gear, fourth gear to fourth and a half gear, or kind of maybe like 70, 80, kind of 90% efforts, something like that, and not really considering max velocity or max intensity intervals until at least your fourth month. Being aware of the need for a warm-up, dynamic warm-ups, strideouts, even a gradual progression of intensity in your warm-up prior to doing the more intense intervals, full recovery between sprint intervals, and then just being aware of the difference between speed training up to 60 meters and speed endurance training kind of 80 meters and beyond. Congratulations on your desire to start a sprint training program. Do be cautious about it. Stay away from being injured, because being injured is no fun. Leave your comments if you have questions. Thanks.